The morning sun was just beginning to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold when Adrian Cole stepped out of his palatial home, briefcase in hand, ready for another day of meetings and conference calls. He was 38 years old, with dark brown hair slicked back precisely, and he wore a slate blue suit that had been custom-tailored to perfection. Everything about Adrian Cole was precise, controlled, and intentionally distant. His house was one of the largest on the exclusive street, a modern masterpiece of glass and steel that his architect had called a triumph of minimalist design. Adrian called it peaceful. His ex-wife had called it cold, but then again, she'd called him cold too before she left 3 years ago, taking half his assets and leaving him with the understanding that he was, in her words, emotionally unavailable and incapable of genuine connection. He'd responded by working harder, buying a bigger house, and making absolutely certain that no one got close enough to levy such accusations again. As Adrian walked toward his car, a sleek, black luxury sedan that cost more than most people's annual salary, he was surprised to find a small figure standing at the edge of his driveway. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with light brown, hair styled in an elaborate updo, with what looked like small jeweled clips. She wore a pink dress under a bright yellow raincoat, and she carried a pink backpack with a small stuffed rabbit clipped to it. Adrian recognized her as the daughter of his neighbors, the Hendersons. They'd moved in 6 months ago, and Adrian had made a point of never introducing himself, beyond a curt nod when their paths crossed. He preferred to keep his distance from everyone, neighbors included. "Good morning," the little girl said brightly, as if it was perfectly normal to be standing in a stranger's driveway at 7 in the morning. Adrian gave her a brief nod and moved to get into his car, but the little girl stepped forward, undeterred by his obvious dismissal. "Will you walk me to school?" she asked, her voice full of hope and innocence. "It's my first day of kindergarten, and Mommy can't walk with me because she has to leave early for her job, and Daddy's away on a business trip, and the bus won't pick me up for another hour. But I'm ready now, and I'm really excited to go." Adrian stared at her, momentarily speechless. "You want me to walk you to school?" "Yes, please. Mommy said you live next door and you seem like a responsible adult. Plus, you're always dressed really nice, so you must be important. And important people are usually good at getting things done. Walking me to school would be getting something done." The logic was oddly sound, in the way that children's logic sometimes is. But Adrian felt immediate resistance. He didn't have time for this. He had a board meeting at 8:30. He had investors to impress. He had a carefully structured schedule that didn't include escorting small children to kindergarten. "I'm sure your mother can arrange something else," Adrian said curtly. "I have important business. Mommy already left," the little girl interrupted. "She works at the hospital and she has to be there really early for her shift. She left me breakfast and said Mrs. Patterson from across the street would check on me in an hour, but I don't want to wait. I want to go to school now. All my new school supplies are in my backpack and I have new crayons and everything." Adrian checked his watch. The kindergarten was 2 blocks away. If he walked quickly, it would take maybe 10 minutes there and back. He'd still have plenty of time to get to his office before the meeting. "What's your name?" he asked, already regretting what he was about to agree to. "Isabella Rose Henderson." "But everyone calls me Bella. What's your name?" "Adrian Cole." "That's a very serious name." "Do people call you anything shorter? Like Andy or Aid?" "No, they call me Mr. Cole or Adrian. Nothing else." "Okay, Mr. Adrian, will you walk me to school, please?" "I promise I'll walk fast, and I won't talk too much if you don't want me to." Adrian sighed. "Fine, but we need to leave now and you need to keep up. I have a meeting I cannot be late for." Bella's face lit up with such pure joy that Adrian felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. "Thank you, Mr. Adrian. You're the nicest grumpy man I've ever met." "I'm not grumpy," Adrian said automatically, though he was very aware that his reputation in the neighborhood was precisely that. The grumpy millionaire who never smiled, never socialized, and made it clear he wanted nothing to do with anyone. As they walked down the perfectly manicured sidewalk, Bella chattered constantly despite her promise not to talk too much. She told Adrian about her excitement for kindergarten, about the new friends she hoped to make, about her favorite color, pink, obviously, about her stuffed rabbit, named Carrot, about her mother who worked very hard as a nurse, about her father who traveled constantly for work but called every night to say goodnight. Adrian mostly grunted responses, checking his watch repeatedly, calculating how long this was taking. But somewhere around the halfway point, he found himself actually listening. Mommy says kindergarten is where you learn all the important stuff, Bella was saying, like how to read and how to be kind to people and how to share and all that. She says the smartest people are the ones who are kind. Is that true, Mr. Adrian? Are you kind? The question caught Adrian off guard. I don't know. I suppose that depends on who you ask. Well, you're walking me to school even though you didn't want to. That seems kind to me. I'm doing it because you needed help and your mother wasn't available. It's not kindness. It's just practical. But you could have said no. You could have just gotten in your fancy car and driven away. But you didn't. You helped me instead. That's being kind. Adrian didn't have a response to that. They walked the rest of the way in relative silence, with Bella occasionally pointing out interesting things. A bird, a flower, a particularly nice car parked on the street. When they reached the kindergarten, a cheerful building painted in bright colors with a playground visible behind a fence, Bella turned to Adrian with a huge smile. Thank you for walking me to school. Mr. Adrian, you're my first friend in the neighborhood. I'm not your friend, Adrian said, but there was less edge in his voice than he'd intended. I'm your neighbor who walked you to school once. That's all? Friends can be neighbors who walk you to school. That's what Mommy says. Anyway, thank you. Maybe tomorrow you can walk me again? Tomorrow you'll take the bus like your mother arranged. Okay, but if I need someone to walk me again, can I ask you? Adrian wanted to say no, wanted to establish firm boundaries, but looking at this little girl with her hopeful eyes and her bright yellow raincoat, he found himself saying, if it's an emergency, only if it's an emergency. Yay, okay, bye, Mr. Adrian. Have a good day at your important business. She skipped toward the school entrance, where a teacher was greeting arriving students, and Adrian watched until he was sure she'd made it inside safely. Then he checked his watch, swore under his breath, and speed walked back to his house to get his car. He was 7 minutes late to his board meeting, and his CFO gave him a curious look. Adrian Cole was never late, ever. The next morning, Adrian deliberately left for work 15 minutes earlier than usual, hoping to avoid any potential encounter with Bella. But as he backed out of his driveway, he saw her sitting on her front porch, dressed and ready for school, her pink backpack beside her. She waved enthusiastically when she saw him, and Adrian told himself to just keep driving. He had things to do. He wasn't a babysitter or a neighbor who got involved in other people's lives. But he found himself stopping the car and rolling down his window. Why are you sitting out here? It's barely 7 o'clock. Mommy had to leave early again. I'm waiting for the bus, but it doesn't come for another hour. I didn't want to bother you, so I'm just sitting here. I brought a book to read. Adrian looked at this small child, sitting alone on her porch with a book, trying so hard to be independent and not be a bother. And he heard himself say, "Get in the car. I'll drive you to school." Bella's face lit up. Really? In your fancy car? Yes, in my fancy car, but hurry up. I have a conference call at 8. Bella scrambled into the back seat, buckling herself in with the competence of a child who'd been taught car safety thoroughly. As Adrian drove the short distance to the school, she chattered away again, this time about the first day of kindergarten and all the things she'd learned. We learned the alphabet song, but I already knew that. And we learned how to line up properly. And my teacher's name is Miss Roberts, and she's really nice. And I made a friend named Marcus who likes rabbits, too. And we painted pictures with our hands, and mine was a tree. That's nice, Adrian said, only half listening as he navigated traffic. Mr. Adrian, why don't you have any kids? You'd be a good daddy because you're very responsible and you have a nice car. The question hit Adrian like a physical blow. That's a personal question, Bella. We don't ask people personal questions. Why not? How do you get to know people if you don't ask them questions? You can ask questions that aren't invasive. What's invasive? It means too personal, too private. Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to be invasive. She was quiet for a moment, then added, but I still think you'd be a good daddy. Adrian dropped her off at the school, watched her skip inside, and drove to his office feeling strangely unsettled. That night he found himself thinking about Bella's question. Why didn't he have kids? The answer was complicated. His ex-wife had wanted children, but Adrian had always said it wasn't the right time. He needed to focus on the company. He needed to build financial security first. He needed to be certain he could provide. But the truth was, he'd been afraid. Afraid of failing. Afraid of not being good enough. Afraid of being the kind of distant father his own father had been. The next morning, and the morning after that, and the morning after that, Adrian found himself leaving early to give Bella rides to school. It became a routine, though he told himself it was temporary. Just until Mrs. Henderson's schedule changed, just until Bella was comfortable taking the bus. But weeks turned into months, and somehow, Adrian found himself looking forward to those morning drives. Bella's constant chatter filled his usually silent car with life. She told him about her day, her friends, her dreams, her thoughts on everything from why the sky was blue to whether dragons could be real, if people just believed hard enough. And slowly, despite his best intentions, Adrian found himself getting attached. He started asking Bella questions about her day. He remembered the names of her friends and teachers. When she mentioned loving a particular book, he ordered it online and left it on her doorstep anonymously. Mrs. Henderson eventually noticed Adrian's daily kindness and knocked on his door one Saturday morning to thank him. "Mr. Cole, I can't tell you how much it means that you've been driving Bella to school," she said, her eyes grateful and slightly teary. "I've been trying to adjust my schedule, but the hospital has been understaffed, and they keep asking me to come in early. Knowing that Bella is safe with you in the mornings, it's been such a relief." "It's on my way to work," Adrian said gruffly. "It's not an inconvenience. It's more than that. Bella talks about you all the time. She calls you her friend. She says you're teaching her big words and telling her about how businesses work and listening to all her stories. You've been kind to her in a way that, well, a way that not many people are these days. I'm just giving her a ride. That's all?" But it wasn't all, and Adrian knew it. He'd been changed by this small girl with her bright yellow raincoat and her endless optimism. She'd reminded him that there was more to life than quarterly earnings and business acquisitions. That connection mattered. That being present for someone mattered. One morning, Bella got into the car looking unusually quiet. "What's wrong?" Adrian asked, surprising himself with how quickly he'd noticed her mood shift. "Tomorrow is Father's Day at school. We're supposed to bring our dads or a special grown-up man in our life to have breakfast with us. But Daddy is on a business trip in Singapore and he can't come home. Mommy said maybe Uncle Pete could come, but he lives really far away." She looked at Adrian with those hopeful eyes. "Mr. Adrian, would you come to Father's Day breakfast? As my special grown-up man friend? I know you're really busy with your important business, but it's only from 8 to 9, and there will be pancakes." Adrian's first instinct was to refuse. This was getting too personal, too attached. He'd already crossed too many boundaries, but looking at Bella's face, he found himself unable to say no. "What time should I be there?" Bella's face transformed. "Really? You'll really come? If it's important to you, then yes. I'll be there. It's really, really, really important to me." "You're the best grumpy friend ever." "I'm not grumpy," Adrian muttered, but he was smiling despite himself. The next morning, Adrian found himself in a kindergarten classroom, decorated with hand-drawn cards and paper flowers, sitting at a tiny table with Bella and eating pancakes that had been cooked by parent volunteers. Around the room, other fathers and father figures were doing the same, and Adrian felt oddly at peace. Bella had made him a card that said, "Thank you for being my friend," with a drawing of what was apparently Adrian, identifiable by his fancy suit, holding hands with a small girl in a yellow raincoat. "This is beautiful, Bella, thank you. Do you really like it?" "I worked really hard on it. I really like it. I'm going to put it in my office." "Really? On your desk where you do important business?" "Really." After breakfast, as Adrian was preparing to leave for his actual office, Miss Roberts pulled him aside. "Mr. Cole, I just wanted to say thank you for coming today. Bella has talked about you nonstop. She was so excited to have you here. You've made a real difference in her life." "I just drive her to school," Adrian said, uncomfortable with the praise. "You do more than that. You show up. You listen to her. You make her feel valued. That's what matters." As Adrian drove to his office, Bella's card on the passenger seat beside him, he thought about Miss Roberts' words. He'd spent so many years believing that success meant financial achievement, that mattering meant having influence in boardrooms and making deals. But maybe mattering was simpler than that. Maybe it was just showing up for a small girl who needed someone to walk her to school. That evening, Adrian did something he never did. He left work early and stopped by a toy store. He found a stuffed rabbit that looked like Carrot and bought it, along with a children's book about rabbits going to school. When he left the package on the Hendersons' doorstep with a note that said, "For Bella," from her friend Mr. Adrian, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt like he mattered. Not because of his money or his position, but because he'd made a small girl smile. Mrs. Henderson sent him a photo that night of Bella hugging the new rabbit, her face beaming with joy. The text read, "She says you're the best friend she's ever had. Thank you for seeing her. Thank you for caring." Adrian sat in his minimalist living room looking at that photo and realized that his ex-wife had been wrong. He wasn't incapable of genuine connection. He'd just been afraid to try. But Bella had walked into his life quite literally and had refused to accept his walls and his distance. She'd seen past the grumpy exterior to the person underneath, and in doing so, she'd reminded him how to be human again. 6 months after that first morning walk to school, Adrian Cole was a different person. He still ran his company with precision and skill. He still closed deals and impressed investors. But he also left work early sometimes to attend Bella's school events. He took her to the zoo on Saturdays when her mother had long shifts. He taught her about numbers and helped her practice reading. And when Mrs. Henderson's ex-husband, Bella's father, made an attempt to reconnect with his daughter, after years of being minimally present, it was Adrian who helped Mrs. Henderson navigate the difficult conversations about boundaries and Bella's well-being. "You've become family," Mrs. Henderson told Adrian one evening. "I don't know how it happened, but you have. Bella loves you. I love you. You're the stable male presence in her life that I'd been worried she'd never have." Adrian felt his throat tighten. "I love her too. I didn't expect to, but I do. Would you consider—" I mean, this might be too much to ask, but would you consider being her godfather? Officially? I'd like to update my will and my emergency contacts, and I'd like to name you as someone who'd care for Bella if something happened to me. You don't have to answer now." "Yes," Adrian said immediately. "Yes, I would be honored." That Christmas, Adrian Cole, who'd spent the previous several Christmases alone in his empty house, found himself hosting a holiday dinner for Mrs. Henderson, Bella, and a few other neighbors he'd gotten to know through Bella. His minimalist house was filled with laughter and music and the warm chaos of people who cared about each other. As he watched Bella show the other children her new dollhouse, a gift from Adrian that had taken him 3 hours to assemble, Mrs. Henderson came to stand beside him. "You know what Bella asked me the other day?" she said. "She asked if someday you might want to be her daddy for real. Not just her friend who walks her to school, but her actual daddy." Adrian felt his heart skip. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that family doesn't always look the way we expect it to. That sometimes the people who aren't related to us by blood become the most important people in our lives. That you love her very much, even if the exact nature of your relationship is still being figured out." She looked at Adrian with an expression he couldn't quite read. "For what it's worth, I wouldn't object. To you being more involved, I mean. To you being more than just a family friend, if that's something you'd ever want." Adrian looked at this woman who'd become important to him, at the little girl who'd changed his entire life, and he realized that he did want that. He wanted more than just morning drives and weekend visits. He wanted to be part of their family officially, completely, permanently. "I'd like that very much," he said quietly. They took things slowly, dating properly while making sure Bella was comfortable with the changes. But Bella, who'd apparently been hoping for this outcome all along, was thrilled. "I told you Mr. Adrian would be a good daddy," she announced to anyone who would listen. "I knew it from the very first day. When he walked me to school, even though he was grumpy and busy," 2 years after that first morning when Bella had stood in Adrian's driveway, asking him to walk her to school, Adrian Cole stood in that same